Hello and welcome to the shed. In today's video we're going to be talking about the differences between dados, rebates and grooves. Hope you enjoy. So why do we want to know the difference between dados, rebates and grooves? Well, yes, it is almost just a name, but it does allow you to know what it is you're actually doing when it comes to your joinery or carcass making. Basically, these three joints are used for carcass making. Whether that is a drawer or a big cabinet, that is still a carcass, and that's what these are used for. They are used for alignment quite often as well, and also hiding back panels and bottoms of drawers. They're the main reasons you want to know these joints, or joints. They're not technically joints as such, they're more an alignment tool, but they do give some strength to certain aspects of carcass building. Today, we're going to be looking at these differences primarily to continue in this beginner series, so we can then use these joints along with the tools that are used to make them better and easier, so we can advance our techniques, and we'll end up doing some more boxes along the way and encompassing these particular extra alignment tools. So what I've got here is I've made a board that has all of these joints on them. Pause the video, let me know down below if you can name which ones are which. We're going to go through them one by one, and I'm going to tell you what they're used for and where they can overlap with each other. So from here on out, I'm going to just refer to them as a joint because it's just easier to refer to them as a joint rather than an alignment jig. First of all, we're going to tackle the dado, which is this one in the middle here. So a dado is always going to be going across the board. The purpose of that is quite often when it comes to shelves within some sort of unit. Now, the way that they're used in terms of joinery is if we have a board like this, we have the end grain that can align like this, and it pushes in between these two areas, and you tap that together with a hammer. So this is ever so slightly narrower than the board you're putting in here. You can see what that's doing is it's giving a lot of strength to the end of this. Now obviously this is going to move. This sort of joint is usually within the middle of a carcass, so when the carcass is joined together and you bring your dovetails together at the top, it puts pressure this way to actually keep them together. But the whole idea is that we have strength in the bottom of the joint just here. So this board has pressure going down into the long grain fibers. So because it's long grain into end grain, it gives quite a bit of strength. So there's no weakness in those fibers because they're pushing on the longitudinal section of it. The pressure is coming right down like this on that end, so it can take quite a bit of weight, and it gives a very solid fixed shelf. Now that is the main purpose of a dado, to give that strength of a fixed shelf. And don't forget, it is always across the grain. So first, I've got a couple of examples of dados from my tool cabinet here. One from the part here, which I've used them for the dividers, which I'll show you in a minute. And then obviously I have my carcass turned upside down here from my main tool cabinet that used to be up on the wall here. If you saw my older videos, you would see me using that. So those dividers I was telling you about, you can see that I have gone in about 1/3 of the thickness of this board and run these dividers in here to divide the gaps between the drawers here. Not only can it be used in a shelf, which I'll show you another example in a minute, where it rebates in, which I've done here with the top of this board here as well, but you can use it in an upright position like these ones here as dividers. So when you come to be doing intricate little dividers within your drawers and things like that, the dado actually works extremely well for that, and is a popular choice if you see a lot of people that build various intricate items on YouTube. The dado is used a lot for that. So if we look up here, this is where the rest of the cabinet came through, and I chopped it off here because this was the shelf, and I've turned it up the other way to get the strength of the dovetails if you watch that video. We can see here that it was wedged in, pinned between the two sections, and that actually helped hold it in there, and this shelf could take a lot of weight. And that's the main purpose, is the amount of weight that something like this can take. Now obviously, now that I've chopped that off, this has turned into a rebate. Now that I've shown you that, we're going to jump back in and we'll talk about rebates. When it comes to a rebate, and if we look closely at this board, a rebate is on the edge of a board. Now, a rebate is always on the edge of the board and not within the middle part of the board. The rebate is the one of these joints that can be used going along the grain or across the grain. These joints are used mainly for alignment of joints. So in terms of an alignment, you can see that you can actually bring them in like this, and it rests on the lower part just here. So resting on the ridge on the inside of your rebate, bring that board in, and then it also aligns up against this up at the back here, and you can see that it's a thinner piece here and you end up with a little ridge. So you remove that material and it allows for that alignment like so. So you can see that has a lot of benefits when it comes to putting a carcass together, whether that is a drawer, a box, anything that you might be nailing or screwing together or gluing with a dowel or some such. It works very well for that. Now, these rebates on the end of the board can also be used in a smaller way to help align when it comes to doing dovetails. Now, I haven't used this because I don't believe it's really necessary, but some people like to make a small rebate on the back end, so when they're transferring their tails to their pins, it makes positive contact and is nice and square against the tailboard. They are also used for hiding back panels of cabinets and whatnot. Now, that's what I was going to do on this cabinet here, but in the end I didn't end up doing that rebate on that. I ended up doing a groove. When it comes to obviously the back of a panel, you can imagine that this is a giant back panel. If you have this flat rebate down the grain, so along the grain with the grain, right the way around the back of your board, and then come in like this, and you can have a board, whether that is plywood or whatever. Now, you'll have to forgive this. This is not, neither of these pieces are 100% square. It's just a couple of scrap pieces that I grabbed. And you can see that that could be in here completely flush on the back. So you have a completely rebated or hidden back panel that looks flush with the sides when you look at the back of your cabinet. So they're the two main ways that rebates are used, but I just want to show you something that I've done on my grand cabinet down here, where I used a rebate for a different purpose, but a similar sort of way. What this is one of the shelves from my grand cabinet down behind me, which I took apart to take it out so I could show you guys. The sawtooth shelf is just a thin piece of 6mm plywood. Now obviously 6mm plywood is not going to have the strength to hold a lot of weight. So what I did is I followed what I'd seen Paul Sellers do, and I've got a hardwood jarrah front on this, and if we look closely here, it's rebated for this plywood. It's rebated here for this plywood to come in and sit down flush with the front here, strengthening the front of the shelf. And then there's obviously just another strengthening cleat in the back so it doesn't bow. And this is a great use for a rebate where you don't necessarily want it to show on the top, but you want it to have the strength along the front of a thin piece of material. So that's what I've done here. And when it comes to the rebates, I actually, because I said you can use it as the back of a cabinet, it means you can also use it for the back of a drawer. Now these little drawers here has a little rebated plywood base on it because I didn't want to have a groove in here that intruded into the depth of the drawer. So that is another use for it. So that brings us on to the last joint that we're going to be talking about, and that is the groove. Now a groove always runs with the grain. If it's going across the grain, it then becomes either a dado, or if it's on the end of the board, it becomes a rebate. So a groove is not on the edge of the board, it's inset from the edge of the board, usually on the bottom or on the back of a cabinet or a drawer. If I pull my drawer out here, we can see the bottom is held in, and that is a grooved drawer bottom. The exact same construction as you saw there on that drawer is used when it comes to cabinets. It's no different. A drawer is essentially just a really small cabinet that slides. So a groove is used for that very purpose. Now, once again, a groove can be used if it's running along the grain and for holding like the back of a shelf or something. You could use a groove for that. It's not very common. I have seen it a few times in a couple of videos where a groove is used on the back of a shelf to strengthen it along it. Instead of running a batten like this, a groove was used. Now there's one more example that I've got here which I used on my ground cabinet back here and on the doors. Now, if you haven't seen that video, once again, this video you will see how I did this if you want to check that video out. I'll leave the links down below to this build, this ground cabinet build. They didn't get too many views. It was one of my earlier videos, so if you are interested, check it out. It's not the best of videos. I have improved it a lot since then. However, if you'd like to, I'd appreciate you checking it out if you're interested. Once again, this is 6mm plywood, so it needed something to grab it because these were sliding in the front of my cabinet, and I'll put them back in there and show you that in a second. But what I've done here is I've run a groove on the inside of this jarrah strip here. Little thumb hole so I can use it to pull it. So if we look here, you can see that this plywood is running in and it's set in a groove. So we've got a piece of thin wood on either side, and this is then stuck in here. Now, the purpose of that in this case was to have a little lip so you could slide the door front. And the other purpose in this case was to stop the door bowing because it's quite thin, and with temperature changes in my uninsulated workshop, it was wanting to bow, and just the one strip on one side was enough to help prevent this. If we look over here, this was how this worked. And once again on this cabinet, a groove was used in the top and in the bottom to house both these sliding doors. So as you can see there, the groove can be used for housing the backs of drawers and then other specialty applications where you've got to use your mind, which is all part of the woodworking and part of designing something, to work out how you can use various joints and alignment tools to work for you to get the desired effect that you want. Grooves are very, very useful in, as I showed you down here, for making a sliding door, and also for, once again, hiding drawer bottoms and the backs of cabinets and whatnot. So you can see that although these joints are very similar, they do have their own specific functions and uses. However, there is definitely some overlap between some of these. At the end of the day, all of these is essentially a groove, whether it's on the edge of the board or middle of the board going across or down the grain. Everything is essentially a groove as such. If you put a groove on the end, it becomes a rebate. If you put a groove in the middle of the board, it becomes a dado. So as you can see, everything comes back down to a groove, which is just a channel removed within a piece of wood to allow it to perform a function. Now, obviously, that is the major crossover, is that everything is essentially a groove. But when it comes to looking at, say, a carcass of a cabinet, the rebate can be used for hiding or aligning the back of a board. Same with the groove. Now, technically, they are the major functions of them, but if, as I said before, you think about it, you can come up with some ingenious ways to make use of these to perform other functions within your furniture or builds. We do have some specialty tools right here that make making a groove, whether it's on the end or the edge of a board or a dado, a little bit easier. So we have things like moving fillister planes like this one, we have plow planes like this one here, and then we have combination ones like the Stanley 45 that can do a whole lot of things. So what I'm planning to do is, at the moment, is we're going to go ahead and we're going to concentrate on each one of these joints and how to do them and how to actually create them yourself with using various methods. And I will also do individual videos on these tools to show you how you can use these various tools, if you've got them, to do these type of joinery and a lot more. that is a basic rundown on the differences. If you do need any more information, please let me know in the comments down below, and I'll try to provide you with some more information. So if you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing down below. If you'd like to support me a little bit further while you're down there, please consider giving me a super thanks for the video if you got some value out of it. I'd very much appreciate that. Or you can check out the link down in the description and maybe consider joining Patreon. That is up to you, of course, but I'd very much appreciate it if you could help to support this small channel to allow me to keep making these great videos for you. If you like this video and you'd like to see some more videos like this, please check out the joint up here where I do a similar type of joint called a half lap. That video is a really good one and nice and easy for you beginners. And I'll also leave the beginner playlist up here, which this video is going to be part of. Bye for now.